shelters. Our emergency response crews cannot respond once wind conditions reach 40 miles per hour. So part of this is on you to make preparations now to keep yourself safe to where our emergency crews don't have to make those calls in the middle of the night. Our Emergency Operations Center is under a partial activation, and we will be here throughout the night. And as we've done before, we'll be coordinating with our local municipalities on hot spots, resource needs, and things that they need to be able to properly respond to this storm. County government buildings and parks will close at 2 o'clock today and remain closed through Wednesday. Sandbag operations continue at both Walsingham Park and at John Chestnut. Right now, I'm going to turn it over to our Director of Emergency Management, Kathy Perkins, for the most recent storm update, and then the Sheriff will kind of update you on the activities of the Sheriff's Office.
Good morning. Tropical Storm Elsa is currently over the Florida Straits and remains a strong tropical storm, moving north-northwest at 10 miles per hour. We are expecting, as Barry said, to have tropical storm force winds with potential gusts up to 70 miles per hour, hence the reason that the National Hurricane Center issued a hurricane watch for our area. The most likely time for those tropical storm force winds to arrive is tonight by 8 p.m., with it exiting tomorrow morning at 8 a.m. We are expected, as Barry said, to receive some storm surge, could be elevations of 3 to 5 feet overnight into tomorrow morning. And with this storm, people are initially going to see those tides lower than normal. As the storm advances up the coast and becomes parallel to us, that storm tide is going to come back in rather quickly. This is why we are really stressing for people that had flooding during Tropical Storm Elsa or Hermine, or in those low-lying areas that are prone to flooding. We highly recommend that you do your evacuation before those winds arrive so we can reduce the need for any emergency response during the storm. We do expect to see potential surge and above ground and the flood-prone areas. You can look up your address to see what type of flooding you could expect along the coastal areas at storm.pinellascounty.org. Of particular areas of concern within Pinellas County, Tarpon Springs Sponge Dock areas, Caladisi and Sherwood Forest RV Park area, Mariners Cove Mobile Home Park, Twin City Mobile Home Park, Riviera Bay area, Shore Acres area, Downtown Gulfport, Crystal Beach, Tarpon subdivision, and we're watching very closely the gauge at Worker Creek, Oldsmar, especially the coastal areas, Johns Pass Village, and Bay Point. Again, I want to stress that if you do not feel safe sheltering in place at home, we highly recommend you seek shelter with friends, family, or in hotels, or as a last resort, you are welcome to come to our 2 open shelters. Those shelters are located at Lealman Exchange, 5175 45th Street North in St. Petersburg. This is open to general population, special needs, and for people that need pet-friendly accommodations. Ross Norton at 1426 South Martin Luther King Jr. Avenue in Clearwater. This is open to our general populations, and if people show up with pets there, we will coordinate with animal services to make accommodations. Pets should come in an appropriate carrier or cage, and you should also bring in pet supplies. Pinellas Suncoast Transit is providing free transportation to shelters today. If you have special needs, and especially for those that are electric dependent, because with these strong winds and ground saturation, we could see power outages with trees coming down, You are welcome to come to our Lealman Exchange. If you need transportation assistance, you can call our Community Information Center line at 727-464-4333. Again, we are stressing that the public finalizes their preparation today. Get your sandbags if you think you may have flooding in your home. Take pictures of your home and contents. Elevate and secure items. If you're in an area where you park a car in a low-lying area that may be prone to flooding, we recommend you move that to a higher area. If you are going to leave your home, or if you start to see any sign of water within your home, you need to turn off the breakers. Again, if you do not feel safe, you need to consider relocating further inland, friends, family, hotel, or the shelters that are available. Do not drive through flooded streets or wade through standing water. There could be hazards that you can't see. We have tips for what the public can do for flooding before, during, and after at storm.pinellascounty.org. As Barry said, we are prepping up for damage assessment, monitoring for flooding concerns. If you see downed trees or areas of flooding, the public can report that through the county's See, Click, Fix app. And damage assessments can be reported for your homes through our Citizen Residential Damage Report. And again, you can find that at storm.pinellascounty.org. And any power outages, you should report them to your power company. Thank you.
Thanks, Kathy. So, as we know, this is going to be a water event. There is going to be flooding. There is going to be storm surge. And that's what gives us the greatest concern. We know that with the wind event, excuse me, that we shelter in place. And the water, though, in many cases, it's easy because this is coming in as a bigger storm and we have evacuations. We don't have mandatory evacuations here, but what we are asking is the people that are in the lowest lying areas and those that are susceptible to flooding, where it's going to happen, and you're going to be affected by the storm surge, that you consider not being there. And again, this is not a mandatory evacuation, it's just a recommendation, because as we've seen in the past with storms, I know what's going to happen is we're going to get calls. This is going to be an overnight event, and people are going to wake up in the middle of the night and they're going to have 3, 4, 5 feet of water, and they're going to call, and we're going to end up having to go out and do rescues. And so we're trying to mitigate that the best we can. So along those lines, on the barrier islands, and we are not going to bar people from going out there, but we are going to do beginning at 6 p.m. tonight through 7 a.m. tomorrow morning until we can do a damage assessment. We are going to restrict access. So there will be deputies and law enforcement officers at all of the bridges from Dunedin all the way south to Paso Grill and St. Pete Beach, where unless you have business out there, unless you're a resident, you're staying at a hotel, or you have a business you're trying to get to as an employee, is that we're not going to allow people out there. So people are going out to surf, going out to do all of the other things that people do out there, or going out for not good reasons. We're not going to let them out there. We want to be able to get in as quickly as we can in the morning and daylight to be able to do the damage assessments and to get the public works crews in there to get everything cleaned up, to get everybody back to normal operation just as fast as we can. And having minimized people out there will help us in that regard. So again, beginning at 6 o'clock tonight, from Dunedin all the way south to Paso Grill, all of the beaches will be restricted access. We'll have deputies out on the beaches with high water rescue vehicles and shallow watercraft to be able to effect those rescues. We're also looking at Oldsmar, Upper Tampa Bay, and the other areas that we know that there's going to be flooding and are susceptible to storm surge. So the traffic lights also throughout the county are a concern. We'll have deputies out, law enforcement officers out. They'll be able to control those intersections because we are expecting some power outages. Remember, the ground is flooded, it's saturated, and there'll probably be trees coming down, and which will affect power lines. So this is not the biggest storm we've seen, but it's also not an insignificant event. We are going to see consequences from it. We just have to ask everybody to be prepared, be as safe as you can possibly be, and we'll get through it. It's expected to be here, I think, as Kathy said, for about 12 hours, and it should exit about 8 o'clock tomorrow morning. So we're prepared, but we need to get everybody's cooperation and everybody's help to get through the next really probably 24 hours and get things back to normal. So that's it from our perspective. Unless Barry has anything you want to take it. Did anybody have any questions? Anything you want to ask?
Sheriff, what is your message to our visitors and guests that are here, especially we just came off the July 4th weekend. There's a lot of people staying in our hotels on the barrier islands.
So really, either leave or shelter in place. I'm not asking people to leave the hotels, not asking people to leave any of the timeshares or anything they have out there. I'm just asking people to be smart about it. And if you are in one of the hotels and you're elevated up, that's fine. And there's no reason to leave. Again, this is I'll call it a soft, restricted entry, just to make sure that we're having people out there that really have a need to be out there, and trying to make it easy on the county's public works crews and on us as we're navigating out there. And there will be rescues that we're going to have to do. I know it's going to happen. It happens every time. It happened last time. So we just want to have those people that are here for tourism to enjoy the beaches, enjoy the hotels, but stay off the roads from about 8 o'clock tonight until about 7 o'clock tomorrow morning. One of the things I will mention, I didn't mention a second ago, is that we will have, and we'll publish the telephone number where people can call, is that for those rescues that we end up doing, is that we will have reunification points. So if people do get rescued, they'll be taken to certain reunification points, one North County, one Mid County, one South. These are not, I want to stress, these are not shelters. These are reunification points where if you've been rescued by law enforcement or by the fire department, that we will take you there, and then you can all meet up with family and friends and get to where you need to be. If people need to go to shelters from there because they don't have a place, then we'll get them to the shelters. But these are reunification points, so we have a centralized point of contact. And if somebody needs to know, because they can't find a loved one, a family member, friend, etc., and they need to know they're there, we'll put a number out where they can call.
Diane, I know you mentioned it, but if you could talk just a little bit more about the overnight nature of the worst of this and the emergency response.
Yeah, it makes it exponentially harder. And some of these things that we're doing, we may not do it and have done it to the extent that we are if it was daylight. But working overnight and in the dark, and when people are sleeping and they get up, and the bulk of this, remember, is going to be between 11 p.m. and 3 a.m., especially as it relates to the storm surge. So that definitely makes it harder, and it can pose for more dangerous conditions because you can't see. Not only do you have water, but you've got darkness on top of it. So it does make it a lot harder and a lot more challenging for us.
Is there a wind threshold where you will close the 3 bridges going to Tampa?
So the bridges, especially the Skyway, and those bridges are controlled by the Florida Highway Patrol. They have their thresholds that are in place. But one of the things that does raise is there a threshold when we will pull law enforcement off the street. Normally for us, it's about 50 miles an hour. This is all on the cusp. And again, this is a very gray area, the storm in many respects. My plan right now is not to pull law enforcement off the street. The sustained winds are about 55 miles an hour. So for right now, we will have law enforcement on the street. We're not going to pull them off, but that's subject to change, which could affect all of it, including what's happening with the roadways.
Can you talk about high tide? I know with Ada, that was probably the biggest thing, is that these waters came in during high tide, and it kind of is looking like a repeat event.
Yeah, I'll let Kathy talk about that. Yeah.
Yeah, the high tide for this does not look like it's going to coincide when those tides are coming in. So, what we could see is we are expecting some high tides tomorrow morning. So that could impact the ability of any water that's standing on the roadways for it to drain back out through our storm drainage system. So we don't expect it to be as high as Ada. Might be a little bit more than people saw for Hermine. But we definitely want people to heed that warning.
With the storm slowing down, that means the storm will be slower going through our area, isn't it?
Could be. It depends on if the winds contract or expand at all. We'll continue to watch that, make sure that we're messaging for when it is safe for, we want to make sure that it's safe for our responders to go out to do damage assessment. And then we'll also be messaging when it is safe for the public to be able to go back out on the streets tomorrow morning.
I know you can never say for sure, but I heard you say if within there you don't think it will be as bad as Ada. Is that fair to say, as like a general statement?
Correct. The projections for Tropical Storm Ada were 4 to 6 feet. We're at 3 to 5 feet, and Ada was a higher came in at high tide, so there was that additional factor. We don't expect to have that high tide when we see those, the surge coming in between 11 and 3.
The questions?
Thank you, Sheriff. Thank you, Kathy.
Great, thank you.
Speed limit on 34th Street of 40 miles an hour. It varies from 45 to 50. And, you know, they even have said once the